Sasansalan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
Have you ever felt like you wanted to scream and shout at someone over an argument or a disagreement? Have you thrown objects in the air or hit a wall in frustration? This emotion is called anger, and it is a perfectly normal feeling. It alerts us to the fact that we have been wrong. It motivates us to respond to a perceived threat. But anger becomes a problem when we can't control it, and it controls us instead. Today, we talk about anger management. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and you're watching MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. Our guests today will help us better understand what anger is and how to control it. Let's welcome our guests. Joining us is Dr. Anne Christine Guevara, who is a neurologist psychiatrist at Bernardo General Hospital and De Los Santos Medical Center. Also with us is Richtofen de Jesus. He's a psychologist from St. Luke's Medical Center, Global City, and De Los Santos Medical Center. Let's talk about what exactly is anger. It's an emotional state that varies in intensity, from mild irritation to intense fury and rage. And we often feel this when someone has perceptively wronged you. Dr. Tin, tell us more about what happens to the body when one feels angry.
So with input, a person would perceive things through our senses, visual, smell, to the skin, to what we feel, what we perceive as threat. That enters the brain as an input. It actually stimulates the emotional brain, which is particularly amygdala, which then stimulates the other parts of the brain, including the limbic system, which is the emotional brain, and the other parts of the brain, like the thinking brain. And all of these, when put together, causes responses. Now, the output can be seen externally, as in physical changes, and internally, it would present as internal changes in the different organs. Example, so physical changes would mean flushing of skin, prominence of the head and neck veins, facial grimacing. So kaya makikita mo talagang galit yung tao, clenched teeth, and tense muscles.
What hormones naman, Dr. Tin, do we release when we're shouting or screaming because of anger?
Merong nag-activate, merong nagpapakalma. So the peaks, the hormones that activate, and these include the adrenaline, noradrenaline, the cortisol. And these are the hormones that are released when we are angry. So kaya nagkakaroon ng adrenaline rush, fight or flight response. And the cortisol, in turn naman, it increases the usage of the sugar in the body. Kaya nagkakaroon tayo ng energy when we are angry.
Anger doesn't exist in a vacuum, and when we're mad or angry, there are a host of other emotions that we experience in the process. Tofi, tell us naman more about this.
When you talk about anger, it's already a result of several processes that are occurring in the mind. So, for example, it will start always with frustration, meaning there is something that you are going for and that you are unfortunately unable to get it. So, therefore, you start to get frustrated from it. Now, as you get frustrated, you now try to reflect back to yourself and try to identify, do you have any resources that will then help you cope up with that kind of frustration? For example, you're going to review your capacity, and then unfortunately, your capacity does not meet the requirements in order for you to cope up with the frustration, then it will also be added to the sense of helplessness. So frustration followed by the concept of helplessness will then allow you to feel the emotion of anger. So from there, as long as the frustration increases, the helplessness increases, your anger becomes bigger and bigger. And because of that, you are now going to react very angry towards the situation.
How does anger differ from aggression?
Anger is a mood. So it's internal. Aggression is when we then externalize the anger that we are feeling. So for example, if you feel that you are so mad, then that's just anger. But if you are already starting to get an object, throw it aside, or for example, unfortunately hurting other people or even yourself, that is how it becomes aggression.
Now, there are different types of anger we should all be familiar with. Tofi, what are some examples of these, different types of anger?
There is such a thing as a righteous anger, meaning there was really a situation that really frustrated you out of the blue, meaning you were unable to really see it coming. And then from there, you then give the reaction of anger itself. Now, this is the time wherein you really felt that you have been hurt, that you have been wronged, and that's why you're reacting that way. On the other hand, there is what we call disproportionate anger, meaning the stimulus itself that triggered it is very small and disproportional towards the reaction that you are giving. So it means that you're making a mountain out of a molehill. You're making a big deal out of a small situation. So that is when it becomes quite uncontrollable.
Now, Dr. Tin, what are some of the most common types of anger na nararanasan ng mga tao?
Some of the most common types of anger are behavioral anger. This is a reaction, no? When one physically reacts towards a feeling of anger that leads to violence and aggression, no? The other one is retaliatory anger or vengeful anger. Ito yung you want to get back as a response to that. For instance, when you had a conversation and you want to get back to that person, no? So it's a retaliation, kaya tinatawag na retaliatory anger. And there's this volatile anger, which seems to come out of nowhere, easily triggered, pero very volatile, kaya it comes down, no? A person comes down quickly as well.
Assertive anger can be a healthy option for expressing anger. This type of anger allows a person to express what they're feeling in a calm, verbal manner. Tofi, please explain to us why this is the best type of anger that a person should practice.
It means that you're just forcefully getting your point to the other person that you're communicating with. It is effective, number one, because you're defending yourself. It allows you to really value yourself as a person. It allows you to tell the other person, hey, we have some boundaries here. I have my own values. I have my own capacity, and you need to respect that. By being assertive, you're now telling the other person, I have a point as well. I have something to say as well. And from that, you can then raise whatever situation or whatever feeling you have within yourself. It's becoming expressive.
There are also more dangerous and physical types of anger, such as behavioral, retaliatory, and volatile. Dr. Tin, could you explain what happens to the brain when we feel these three?
Persons with these kinds of anger, it's really impaired, it's decreased. So the person cannot think clearly, it's very emotional, the judgment is also impaired, kaya things get out of hand, no? They cannot think clearly, and they do things and say things that they do not mean. And then all of a sudden, when mood shifts, no, they suddenly calm down. That's where the thinking part comes in. Mali pala yung ginawa ko. I was not able to manage my anger at that point. So that's how it goes, no? It's an impairment in the regulation of the connections in the brain, the thinking brain and the emotional brain.
Now, anger is normal, but it can be detrimental to both your physical and emotional health when you lose control of it. More on this when we return. We are connected to healthcare. You're watching MedTalk Health Talk.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
There are many causes of anger, ranging from external to internal influences. But whatever the cause, managing your anger is more important. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and you're watching MedTalk Health Talk. We're together in health. Any person or event can make you angry. Now, there are many reasons why one might get angry. Let's go into the causes of the more common types of anger, which are chronic, self-abusive, and verbal. Now, these types can affect a person at home or in the workplace. Tofi, can you tell us more about the possible causes of anger?
There are some people who could not really tolerate things that are not going their way. So that's the first one. You get angry because whenever things are not going as smoothly as you're expecting them to be, you get angry. Another cause of anger is that it became reinforcing for you across time. It meant that when you were getting angry, you got what you want. It means that whenever, for example, something frustrating comes to your way, you then start to get angry, and then the situation changes into your favor. Another cause of anger, of course, is genetics. If your parents are people who are quite angry, of course, then you will also have that situation wherein you can then see them and be modeled by them in the way that you are behaving as well. Another one is that you have low tolerances of your own incapabilities. So they usually blame themselves for things that are not supposed to be blamed about, and their attribution is a little bit off. And because of that, their reaction is usually an angry emotion.
Sometimes we use anger to replace other emotions we'd rather not deal with, such as emotional pain, fear, loneliness, or even loss. Tofi, can you explain to us why this happens naman?
Actually, as a defense mechanism, we have what we call reaction formation. Reaction formation means that you're going to substitute a feeling, usually the opposite of what you are feeling right now, in order for you to defend your mind in terms of becoming stable. So, for example, let's say there is a loss that you have felt because of a loss of a loved one. The loss is then being converted into anger because handling the anger is a more viable option, so to speak, as compared to handling the loss. So what happens now is that the person, instead of feeling sad, instead of feeling in touch with that real emotion, will then choose to get angry instead.
Is anger a normal process in trying to grieve for a loss?
Actually, it's form of the DABDA: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. We really get angry in that part because having a loss is a frustrating situation. It is something that we do not want, and yet we have to accept it. You will really have that level of anger. However, it is something that you have to go through. By being angry, it means that you're just releasing frustrations that have not been processed with you. The point there is that not to remain angry.
Anger can also be a symptom or response to a medical condition. It can be a symptom of depression, ADHD, substance abuse, or even bipolar disorder. Dr. Tin, let's talk about this. Why do these disorders trigger anger?
In depression, anger is actually internalized and externalized. So when we say internalized anger, the person would feel low mood, hopelessness, would have crying spells, and suicidal thoughts. So they're easily triggered by the circumstances in their lives. And sometimes it can also be biological, as in chronic kind of stress. So chronic kind of stress causes dysthymia or low mood for a long time. And this lowers their threshold in coping with certain life situations. So they internalize that anger and turn towards themselves. Now with ADHD, we know that the key points in ADHD is inattention and impulsiveness. So there is a misunderstanding most of the time because of the lack of attention to details. The person cannot understand fully or cannot fully focus on that situation. There will be shifting of moods and thinking and focus. And because of that, no, it causes some conflicts. Another example would be adults with ADHD who usually present with lack of direction. And all of these, causes frustration, disappointment on the part of the patient. And again, the anger then turns towards the self.
Can a person who's really angry be at risk of, say, a heart attack or stroke?
When one is angry, again, we stimulate the sympathetic system, the adrenaline rush, that it would cause increase in blood pressure, increase in heart rate, vasomotor responses would be more of differences in the caliber of our blood vessels, so whether it will constrict or dilate. And there's also the release of inflammatory markers, which causes clotting. So if we will discuss this in the context of, for instance, heart attack, so kapag tumaas ang blood pressure, it would cause stress on the heart. It can also cause arrhythmias or a dysregulation of the heart rate. Mag-iiba yung heart rate.
Some people are actually more prone to anger than others. Dr. Tin, what are the parts in the brain that are different in a person who is quick to anger versus a person who is not?
Both nature and nurture factor in on how people respond to certain situations and causes angry outbursts. And the nature part is the environment, how the patient or the person has been reared, and the biological aspect is the genetic part. Now, the wiring in the brain is very important. That's why other people, like the type A personalities, are more prone to angry outbursts. The parasympathetic system, which releases the acetylcholine is known to be quite higher in the people who don't get angry easily as compared to those who are quick to anger. Also, the connectivity in the brain. So, neuroimaging studies would say that there's better connectivity in those who are calm and collected in the face of stressful situations because the thinking brain can manage the emotional brain during those times.
Now, you can't get rid or avoid the things that anger you, but you can learn to control your reaction to them. When we return, we'll give you tips on how to best manage your temper. Your health is our mission. This is MedTalk Health Talk.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
The goal of anger management is to reduce both your emotional feelings and the physiological arousal that anger causes. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and you're watching MedTalk Health Talk, where your care comes first. Anger doesn't look the same for everyone as all express it differently. Dr. Tin, can you give some tips on how we can keep anger at bay?
Try to have breathing exercises. If you know that you're going into a stressful situation, like in the office work, try to do some meditation. Or when you're already in that stressful situation, try to pause for a while. And if you can, walk around first, let the emotions subside before you face the situation again, to avoid any untoward incidences. And then, of course, on the background of, because we are preventive, we try to reinforce our thought processes so that when we face certain stressful situations, we're already ready to face them. So that would be trying to pause, trying to find out our triggers, and develop our better judgment.
Tofi, what are some steps that our viewers can try at home to help manage their anger?
In deep breathing, what you're trying to do there is to slow down the heart rate that you're having in order to tell your brain that your body is already calming down. Another factor there is for you to mimic a behavior that you are seeing. We are also asking our patients, for example, to count from 20 going down to 1. What we're doing there is we're slowing down the possible impulsivity that they are trying to manifest. So, for example, let's say something frustrating happened at home. You tell yourself, okay, I'll count myself from 20 to 1 first. And then by doing so, you are now preventing your brain to become very impulsive and very intense. For those people who have inward anger, particularly those, for example, who really hate a lot of who they are, we usually let them have a certain reflection. There are certain reflection exercises, gratitude exercises, and self-calming exercises. The main goal of those activities is to allow you to have a peaceful reconciliation with your limitations. It allows you to understand that even though you are limited and flawed, it doesn't necessarily define you as a person. And by doing so, by being reconciled with who you are, you will then have a better outlook of yourself and of other people as well.
Dr. Tin, what are some signs that one should already seek help from a professional with regards to their anger?
When your emotions or your angry outbursts already disrupts your daily routine, affecting your relationships and your work, maybe you should consider that. Second would be when people are starting to notice, no, and they give constructive criticisms. Listen to these people. Maybe you really need some help there. Then physical symptoms are being evident, no? You develop hypertension, for instance, no? Maybe you really need to address the underlying condition, which is having this emotional outbursts. And finally, if you started to physically harm or verbally harm yourself and others, maybe that's the time you should seek professional help. But for me, prevention is always the key. So when you feel that something is not quite right with how you feel, maybe it's best to consult to clarify things, to avoid diagnosing yourself, and the intervention is given early.
Okay, and with that, Dr. Tin, do you have any final message for our viewers?
When emotions really get high, the pandemic, the different limitations that we have on the daily basis, it's best to really sort our feelings, consult another person, express ourselves, and focus on the good things so that we could avoid getting angry.
And Tofi, before we go, do you have any message for our viewers?
Getting angry is just a momentary reaction. However, its consequences may be long-term. We need to understand that we should not sacrifice that moment for a very long-term effect that we will be suffering for a long time. We need to understand that regulation is the key. Anger is always there, but it can be controlled.
Thank you very much, neurologist, psychiatrist, Dr. Ann-Christine Guevara, and psychologist, Rick Tofe de Jesus. Maraming salamat sa inyo. We want to be your partner for a lifetime of good health. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.